dead body that is not exterminated becomes one of them. It gets up and kills. The people it kills get up and kill.
Welcome to Ace Proudly Talks for the Superstars. Tonight, with guest, the incredible.
We were sitting on the sofa watching TV, and I think some music video came on that particularly annoyed us both, and you know, we turned around and went, we can do better than that.
It's 1998, and Damon Albarn has agreed with Jamie Hewlett to create a band that doesn't exist. Let's start with a definition. Consider all of the media that surrounds any given act. The artist you view only exists through the music that they publish and the press that they give. The idea of a virtual band takes that idea and runs laps with it. There isn't meant to be a view of the real artist behind this wall of illusion. Alvin and the Chipmunks and the Archies had tried, but this was going to be different.
If you can believe in figures such as Eminem and Marilyn Manson, why not get your head around something which takes that to its logical conclusion? The whole pop aesthetic is more and more about personalities, and you can get carried away with that and end up being let down. Humans are such fragile creatures, and the whole nature of celebrity screws you up. This project is about trying to destroy that and take it further, to manufacture something with real integrity. It requires a leap of faith.
It's clear that both Jamie and Damon were itching at this point to venture somewhere else. Damon was beginning to break free from the various shackles that accompanied his other band, Blur. Despite the fact they'd pushed their sound into a new territory with their previous album, it's clear that they were all desiring new frontiers and were pursuing other side projects. So when the band was once again in the studio recording a new album, they had not only a new producer, but new tensions developing between them. They were each going through their own problems, and the sessions were, to put it lightly, a mess. None of the band members were in the best of states. 1999 came with the result of these sessions, an album called 13. This was the complete assassination of the labels that had plagued Blur for some time. Their Life trilogy had given them the unwanted reputation of a quote-unquote Britpop band. Whilst their self-titled had deviated, 13 was taking it to an extreme. Long improvisation-based songs across all spectrums, pure heavy guitar noise, brooding chords, tender choirs, drum machines, and everything in between. Blur had transformed into a whole new band, and this album served as a self-portrait of the mental state of all four members at the time. 13 was taken seriously critically, and was praised upon release by the press. All eyes were on the band to see what direction they'd go in next. Whilst not the whole of Blur, Damon certainly had a few ideas up his sleeve. Albarn would dip his toes into solo territory with scoring soundtracks, notably Ravenous and Ordinary Decent Criminal.
Listen, I'm gonna start losing my rag soon. Right, when we play to the track, don't listen to the click, listen to the music. I'm only interested in you playing in the music, I don't care about...
But his biggest project was yet to be revealed, this unreal band currently titled Gorilla. Damon and Jamie toyed with the project for about 6 months, but there was still a problem: money. Unfortunately, funding would need to be secured for this project. This virtual band would not only be an outlet for Damon's music, but one formed entirely around artwork and animation from Jamie. This would cost loads of money, but where would they get it from? Luckily, Damon was able to negotiate with his record label EMI that Blur could have a best-of compilation release if they gave Damon the funds for this Gorilla project. Coming in armed with a handful of demos and a handful of drawings, Damon and Jamie walked out of Tony Wadsworth's office with a band that didn't quite exist signed to Parlophone Records. Thus, work could officially begin. Engineers Jason Cox and Tom Gerling, who also worked on previous Blur albums and Damon's soundtracks, were brought on board the project to help Damon out, and it's during this pre-Y2K era where most of the demos and ideas for this Monkey album were laid out. Check this out, what's been stated to be the very first Gorillaz song, Ghost Train. Listening to it, you can hear Damon trying to make it as different to his normal style as possible. Have fun with it. A Human League sample at its base with a loud, prominent falsetto stringing it together as this track goes off the rails entirely. Damon has also gone on record to state that the Blur song On Your Own is, at least in spirit, the very first Gorillaz song.
Him to experiment and explore his love of music, because of course with Blur, you know, there is something that is expected of Blur. Even though they were always very different with every album, he still had to keep it within a certain framework that was Blur. Damon loves hip-hop and black music, and suddenly he was able to experiment, and I was able to experiment. Nobody was going to tell us what to do, which is great because you have total freedom, and then you do your best work. And the funny thing,
the process of constructing this beast continued through 1999 up until 2000, So it was during early recording sessions for the album that an evil, wicked idea would spawn. Damon decided to bring somebody else on board. That somebody else was named Junior Dan. He was called in by Damon to provide bass, as Damon took interest in the work the left-hand bass he provided with Augustus Pablo. It's unclear how they met though. Damon says Junior heard him playing melodica and popped on over, while Junior Dan says he was called in by Damon. After a good chunk of work on this album was done, the ragtag team figured it was time for a fresh pair of ears and new players for the project, so the group needed to decide on a new producer, one that could complement their ambition for this record, like a fine martini paired with the main course. One name that came up was Dan the Automator, hip-hop producer extraordinaire, and after a quick phone call, Dan flew over to London to see what the monkey business was about. He not only had the skills to create the sound Damon wanted, adding his psych trip hop science swagger to the music, but he had the names for any needed backing, keys to the collaborators, if you will. With this, the precedent thrown into the Gorilla ring was that they'd use other musicians as a way to develop and make their sound unique and completely different, akin to a mile-long canvas that anybody can draw on. It wouldn't just be Damon with the controls, otherwise it would just be Damon Albarn's solo project. For example, Dan the Automator brought on legendary turntablist Kid Koala on the Gorilla train for record work, getting him in through the beats they did together in the group Handsome Boy Modeling School, a super producer supergroup of hip-hop madness. The Damon-Dan duo would have him furiously scratch on nearly every single track over the course of a day, nabbing out the bits that they liked, before the Mad Waxman would run off to soundcheck his show at the Scala at the end of the day. This Dan opening would lead to a number of names appearing in collaboration on the album. One of the only people who was called up to play on the album but never responded was Andy Summers of the Police fame. He never returned the call back. If he did, it could have made things very interesting. Oh well. There must have been a ghost in his machine. Regardless, the studio was filled with a lighthearted atmosphere and creativity, with the sessions being enjoyable, spouting bold, brave, and cutting-edge tunes. But recording in London during the late winter months gave the record a much darker, depressing tone that needed to be fixed with a healthy dosage of sunshine and weed. Ultimately, a change of scenery was needed, so after some time, the team packed their things and moved on over to G-Jam Studios in Jamaica, where most of Damon's singing was recorded. Most of the melodies on this batch of tracks prior to Jamaica were improvised, complete gibberish, or non-existent, so while abroad, Damon got about to inking the lyrics of these song sketches, mostly writing them down on whatever was around minutes before recording. Jamaica brought about its fair share of fun, whether that be in the way a new energy was granted to the album, or the fact Damon managed to smoke 2 suitcases full of weed during his stay, but back on Jamie's end, he'd started to develop the band. This is the other half of the project. Damon made the music, and Jamie made the characters, world, and art that surrounded it, be it for promotional posters, magazines, or covers, anything that required what Jamie was replacing. An actual band. At first, Gorillaz started off as a 3-piece with Terry, Louie, and Russell. From there, a 4th character, Paula, was added, but Damon said that Jamie should try drawing something different and maybe age Paula down, as Jamie was always drawing older girls. Eventually, each character reached their final form. Terry became 2D, Russell dropped the L becoming Russell, Paula became Noodle, and Louie became Murdoch. The 4 members of the band Gorilla had been drawn. Jamie also ended up bringing some other folks to help him out with Gorillaz. After funding was secured, he pitched the concept over lunch to Matt Wakeham. They had both recently gotten over the cancellation of Foo Action, the follow-up to their comic Get the Freebies, and Jamie had decided to invite Matt on board as they were close working partners. Matt would take charge writing wherever a hand was called for. Biographies, interviews, the whole shebang.
He took me out for lunch. He and I had been we'd been post Foo Action not happening as a second season of comics in the face, which we were going to be doing together. We'd been looking for something to do together. We'd actually spoken with Passion Pictures about the idea of maybe coming up with an animated series or that we could pitch. He was living with Damon at the time. Jamie and I were also working on the pitch for what would become the live action version of Foo Action at the time. And he took me out for lunch and said, look, I've got this project I've been developing with Damon. I think it's going to be a goer. And in fact, they had the advance by that point. And he said that he wanted me to come on board and work with him. He wanted to give me a job. And I said, cool, tell me about it. What is it? Yep, I'm into that. And what do you need me to do?
It really was just us working to get everything off the ground. Coming up with, Jamie drawing, coming up with the ideas for the character stories. And basically, as the project grew, it wasn't just bringing the site in-house, it was we needed to scale up. So that's when we started to look to hire.
Eventually, this team that Matt began to hire united under the name of Zombie Flesh Eaters, who would design everything else around Gorillaz that wasn't the music. Packaging, advertisements, merchandise, interviews, promotion, the whole shebang. The band was now assembled, the tunes had been finished, and now it was time for this ogre to rise. After the album was mastered by Howie Weinberg, it was time for a proper release to the world, so Gorillaz had to pick a debut single.
2 weeks to animate. 8 weeks to choose a song.
Well, don't you think that's enough time?
We're both in agreement on what should be the second single, or the first proper single, because this is sort of supposed to be a low-budget video, and it's kind of a small release.
The song Tomorrow Comes Today was chosen as an introduction to Gorillaz. When did that Z get that? A spaced out song with Damon addressing his fears of technology in the future. It's certainly a piece about the modern era, possibly harkening back to the fear of events such as Y2K, the millennium-ending media spook to remind those celebrating the new year that, no, maybe things aren't all sunshine. Melodicas, dusty beats, cryptic lyrics, this song has it all. The group also chose 3 other songs deemed adequate to test the waters with. Damon then pissed off to do something about a black book. Meanwhile, Jamie got to work on a promotional video. He called up his buddies at Passion Pictures, a film company he had worked with previously for a series of advertisements centered around Virgin Cola and another scrapped project. Passion Pictures picked up the project as soon as they heard Dan Abnormal himself was behind it and joined in on the monkey fun. Matt went out to Soho one London night to gather the time-lapse footage necessary for the video, and Jamie got access to some exclusive technology for the time. Is that Banksy? The debut of Gorillaz was ready, and so the Tomorrow Comes Today EP was released November 27th of the year 2000. Wait, EP? But I just said it was a single. Yes, it was an EP. It's clear that both Damon and Jamie had a better first single in mind, but we'll get to that later. Thus, this release wasn't single chart eligible, and it wasn't promoted nearly as much as it could have, nay, should have been. Unfortunately, there aren't really reviews of this EP online due to how relatively small of a launch it was. However, from what I know, it went down alright. Behind the scenes, there was more focus devoted to a larger project the group was working on. The goal here was milestones, to get as far as they could with this Gorillaz project. However, this EP did not come without its milestones. For one, it marked the launch of the official Gorillaz website. At first mention, you may think that there isn't really much you can do with a website, as most band-related websites nowadays are quite boring. A link to their store, some upcoming news, maybe a little bit of interactive content. However, Gorillaz would take this concept and turn it into something more. This website was a beast to run. When word came in to Matt about making an interactive website of this kind of level, it was, quote, an impossible brief. The brief in question was to make something akin to walking through the Spencer Mansion from Resident Evil, which was unheard of during times when computers looked like this. Who even made that type of thing? Damon initially didn't quite trust Matt to manage the website, for Damon had initially considered Einar Orn Benediktsson of the Sugar Cubes, who had his own web company, to pitch the website idea to. Of course, Matt persevered, and the first idea he had to pitch was a 5-track game, where you could use stems of unused Gorillaz songs and demos to make your own little mixes, your own little Gorillaz tunes. Damon thought that was an amazing idea, and he started to develop faith in Matt. Matt would first begin working with an outside company called Get Frank, but operations moved inwards. The formation of the prior mentioned Zombie Flesh Eaters was partially due to looking for a crew to work the website.
My brother got me the job. He basically I had a mutual friend of Matt Wakeham. They met each other. My brother was in London working. I was in Birmingham working on websites, .com nonsense. And then, they needed work. They needed help.
If you were to enter the website, you'd be able to enter the recording studio of Gorillaz, Kong Studios. And what laid in there was a fully immersive, interactive, lived-in, character and game-filled website. You could walk around the studio, enter the rooms of the 4 members, play games, order merch, watch music videos, interact with weird and interesting characters, and speak with other fans. A lot of these odd characters originate from other concepts Jamie had laid down. Some of the material came from drawings for commercial work, some came from characters of upcoming projects like Fu Action. All of it came together under the supervision of Matt to create a coherent world that Gorillaz had really, truly lived in. Some called it transmedia, others just called it really cool. It was insane. It was all due to the experimentation and process the people behind the curtain were willing to go through. Everybody at Zombie Flesh Eaters was always working on something and creating an idea. No other team could have particularly captured what Gorillaz had going on during this time, because all of these individuals were, despite the hectic work behind the scenes to deliver on all of these fronts, having fun as friends. That's what would make Gorillaz tick. That's what would make the Gorillaz vibe hit single or not. The mark, however small, had been laid. Gorillaz' name had been added to the wall of music, and some ears had been perked. On top of that, we finally had our first true introduction to the band through a series of character cards that were included in the CD. Who are these Gorillaz exactly? Tootie, Murdoch, Russell, and Noodle, and Bongo Ape, but we don't talk about Bongo Ape. All of these members are unique in their own way, be it the way they represent aspects of music or are caricatures of various stereotypical musical figures. Take Murdoch, Alphonse, Nichols, for example, the bassist of the band. He's the real ringleader behind the group, the slimy dealer of it all, emphasis on slimy. Satanist, jailbird, local nuisance, womanizer, druggie, and scummy, not afraid to commit to shady dealings for his benefit, like how he quite literally made a deal with the devil for his bass guitar. In exchange, he donated his soul and his middle name. He was the first character to be nailed down in concept, rock and roll star satire at its classiest. You see that Keith Richards influence? And here we have the frontman, 2D, monikered in mean spirit to recognize the 2 dents in his head, the hyphemia that makes him such a pretty boy. Tall, blue hair, voice of an angel. Like an angel, his head is completely lost in the clouds. Local graffiti enthusiast, dabbles in keyboards. 2D is the empty-headed frontman that Murdoch is jealous of. Then there's Russell, the hip-hop heavyweight, dealing exclusively in beats. Russell is the straight man in the groove, the one who keeps everybody else in check. Educated and possessed by the soul of his dead mate Del the Ghost Rapper, caught in the crossfire of a drive-by Russell was the sole survivor of. He provides all percussion and beats for the band, and when Del escapes him, the Spectre himself throws down a verse or two. Finally, there's Noodle, the Japanese child of the bunch. Can't speak fluent English, sent to England in a FedEx crate. She's the guitarist of the band, and knows how to inject energy into a track. She's got guitar chops, and she knows how to use them. Despite her peculiar set of surrogate parents, she's moving her way through life just fine. Together, they are Gorillaz, out to rid the world of the disease hidden inside the radios. But how did this unlikely set of characters form? Well, it all begins June 6th of 1966, the day Murdoch Nichols was born.
Oddly, everyone knew who my father was, but no one quite knew who my mother was, although there was quite a lot of vivid suggestions. I was just found as a baby on Sebastian Nichols' doorway one night when he came home from one of his sessions in the pub.
He was unruly in school and raised by an abusive father who'd force him to perform on stage for money. Besides being constantly bullied and being a bit of a prick, he'd discover his passion for music. After he left school, he'd attempt a multitude of bands throughout the 80s and 90s, with names like Crimson Backdraft, The Burning Sensations, Two's a Crowd, the list of shame goes on.
So, what happened was I was out one day on a nicking spree, hoisting we call it, on the rob.
August 15th, 1997, first time we met.
Yeah, like I say, I was out robbing on a nicking spree, yeah, right? And what I had in mind was to crash my car through the front window of this music shop. Uncle Norm's Keyboard Emporium, it was called. It was the local shop, basically, that sold all the keyboards. And what I thought was I would just crash through the front and then steal a bunch of the keyboards, and form a new band.
It was the shop I was working in.
So I crashed the car through the window, and it landed straight in 2D's head. Amazing, direct hit. Knocked one of his eyes straight out. Put him in a coma immediately. I got arrested for that, and my community service, my sentence, was to look after this silly sod.
I don't know what I did wrong.
Obviously, I abused that position and took the opportunity to bully him to within an inch of his catatonic life. So, one time when we were mucking about in a car park in Nottingham, 2D actually went through the windscreen. And I think it was that second car accident that actually brought him back round. Yeah? Because it knocked his other stupid eye out. But I'll tell you what, when he stood up, wow, what an image. Tall, pretty, blue spiky hair.
No eyeballs?
No eyeballs. I knew that he had to be the front man. After that, everything sort of just fell into place. I found Russell, our drummer, working in a record shop, Big Rick Black's Record Shack in Soho. Everyone had heard of Russell because he knew everything there was to know about hip-hop. He was the rhythm king. And also he was possessed by the undead, ghosty spirit of his dead friend, Del. Good drummer, too. So I kidnapped him and took him over to Kong Studios, which was our headquarters, our isolated recording studio HQ at the time.
Yeah, all we needed, right, was a guitarist. Well, we did have one, Paula Cracker.
But she was rubbish, so we advertised for another.
Paula Cracker was Tootie's girlfriend and Don the Sixth String for the group at the time. However, a sticky affair with Murdoch in the toilets of their Kong studios led to an even more broken nose on Murdoch's end and an empty space a guitarist needed to fill for the band.
We stuck an ad in the music paper NME. I can't remember exactly what we wrote. I just know it stated, "No hippies."
Moments later, there was a knock on the door, and there was his FedEx crate outside.
Nothing more. No one there. Just a crate.
We opened it up.
And inside was Noodle, our guitarist. We were a band. We changed our name to Gorillaz there and then, and the rest is history.
The band had been introduced to the world, and with their music out in the public eye before the blink, Gorillaz decided to take their show to the magazines, marking their first proper appearance to the public. Dazed and Confused is a British magazine founded in 1991, and they were to be the messenger to the world, the satellite, to aid Gorillaz in their hopes for world domination. The 2000's December or 2001 January edition would provide an interesting sight with these Gorillaz smacked right on the front. Inside we'd get an interview, the first of many where Gorillaz prove they aren't any old normal band. There's fighting, there's cursing, there's dysfunctionality, but at its core the message is that they are the anti-pop. They're the new force of music ready to dominate, weaved together with Matt Wakeham's pen in hand and Jamie's pen in hand. But where lay the teeth of this ogre? You can't be all bark and no bite. Well, it just so happens March 5th of this new year is when the ogre finally bares his teeth, a musical offer that the world just couldn't refuse.
This particular song is in B-flat minor. Modulation occasionally to E-flat minor.
If Tomorrow Comes Today was a dip into the musical waters, then Clint Eastwood was a cannonball and then some, a stick of dynamite that nobody came prepared for. 4 crashes, and hit history is made. Going past the infectious hook that came packaged with the Suzuki Omnichord, we have a surprise appearance from the anti-Dobalina Dr. Bombay himself, West Coast's very own Del the Funky Homo Sapien. Del, like Damon, is a man with music etched into his life. Born in Oakland and growing up in the midst of the hip-hop revolution, Del would start his career humbly writing lyrics for his cousin's rap clique, the group being the Lynch Mob and his cousin being Ice Cube. Del's big debut to the public eye, however, lies in the song Mr. Dobalina, an off-the-wall rap about some guy taken from a Monkees song. 4 minutes spent laying down an eccentric diss of some dude that he basically made up.
Take a little tip from the tabloid, because I know I'm not paranoid. When I say I saw you trying to mock me, now you and your crew are on a mission trying to...
He'd go on to gain a cult following for all of his projects, releasing albums such as No Need for Alarm, Future Development, and Both Sides of the Brain. But if you must mention Del's albums, you can't go without mentioning Deltron 3030. Deltron 3030 is a trip-hop triforce of 3 hip-hop innovators, that being Del, Kid Koala, and Dan the Automator. What a coincidence. Deltron 3030 is also the name of the first album by this group, and it is fantastic, simply put. The concept of this album is one of a science fiction rap opera about a character named Deltron Zero rising up against its oppressive system, critiquing the industry, politics, and racism that inhabits it, all culminating in this intergalactic battle. Off the wall, pure creativity is the only way to describe it. It's a great, great album.
It's the year 30.
Wait, that voice sounds familiar. But themes of being true to yourself and being anti-corporation are so present on this album, it's no wonder Del went to work with Gorillaz. He must have said yes immediately to the offer. I mean, that verse is legendary. Well, whilst Del's verse is amazing, Clint Eastwood's verse wasn't originally destined for Del. On the B side of the vinyl release and on some promotional pressings, you'll notice a Phil Life Cypher version, Phil Life Cypher being an upcoming British rap group composed of MCs Cy Philly, Life MC, and DJ Napa. This trio could have scored a huge break from Clint Eastwood, as they were still buried in the underground. Their debut LP was months away from release, and all their other work was strictly spread around under the surface.
Well, we've done our album, The Millennium Metaphors, which we was waiting for to be released on JacksFilms Records. And at the time, the Gorillaz, I think they was looking for some UK artists. So they'd actually sent our album to the Gorillaz guys. And one day I just got a call from the guy on the label who sounded really excited and said there was someone who wanted to meet me. Could I come down on a certain day to a studio? And he couldn't tell me what it was about, who it is. He just said it was something big. So I turned up at the studio and nearly fell on the floor when I walked in. I saw Damon Albarn and all them guys. They basically said, look, we've listened to all the albums in the UK. We've listened to you guys' album. But they said, look, at the moment, we only really want one rapper. We'd just like to use you. And then from that point, it just became a thing for me to be determined to say, look, we're coming out as a group. And I don't think it makes sense for me just to be in the Gorillaz and then for Life Cypher to come out afterwards. I would prefer if the both of us could be part of it. And even DJ Napa, after a couple of weeks of getting on their case, they invited us all down. We went to a hotel that we was like, we can't believe we're staying here, man. It was just so dope. And then from that side, kicked a verse. And then as soon as they heard Cy's verse, they was like, yeah, you know what? I think the two of you could work. We just went from there.
My style is totally buck wild, I'm most definitely happening. To your brains I'll be tapping in, to computers I'll be hacking in. Cause me I'll be out of this world like aliens or time traveling. I'm dabbling in the fist of fury technique when I speak. Forget karate kid in these wooden blocks, I chop through concrete. Concrete.
And I think what happened is they went to Jamaica to mix down the album. Dan the Automator, he must have heard the versions of the stuff we done. He said there was a bit of equipment that he'd forgot that he needed to go back to America that was important to bring to the studio to use. And when he'd gone back, he took our verses off, put on Del the Funky Homo Sapien. And then when he came back, he told Damon that he wasn't really willing to work with the Gorillaz and do this stuff unless he could use his own rapper.
Dan is finishing up the record the same time he's finishing up Deltron. And he has this idea that he want to do with this song because I guess for whatever reason he think I could come up with better lyrics for the song. Like, nah, I don't want to do that. I want to go home. I'm finished with my shit. Take me home. And he like, you could do it like in like 30 minutes, I know, tops. I'm like, all right, fuck it. And he was letting me see like the concept art and stuff from it, right? So I recognized the Gorillaz artwork, like that's dude to do Tank Girl, you know what I'm saying? So I was interested in it just because of that. I'm a big comic book fan, so stuff like that, like I peak, like, oh, okay. And like I said, I'm a visual artist first. So I was just tripping off that alone, you know what I mean?
And at the time, I know Damon, when he first called us, he said, look, this is UK music, I want UK rappers. And then, yeah, we got told 3 or 4 months after. That kind of really did, most probably put me in a bit of a depression because at the time I was a single father, struggling with my 2 kids, and I've been told, you know, don't worry, your life's about to change, your children's life will change, and, you know, things will become much easier for you in life. And I kind of most probably banked on what I was being told, not fully understanding the industry. So it was a massive letdown to us. But saying that, as Phil Life Cypher, because we was involved with the Gorillaz, it got our group for life a lot more light, and we got signed to an agency where we get a lot more shows due to the fact that we'd worked with Gorillaz. So although it done me some harm in the fact of feeling the way I felt about just being dropped from nowhere after being promised so much stuff, it still worked out okay for us musically in the end.
Del's verse must have resonated with Dan better. He must have seen something in it, something that could have been an attribute to lead Clint Eastwood to its enormous success. What a song. Gorillaz had dropped one of the most unconventional and wholly creative songs of the 2000s a year into the new millennium. Clint Eastwood was viral, it was infectious. Every single angle of the song's release screamed counterculture. This hip-hop hybrid gnawing its way into the charts is one absolutely bonkers aspect, considering this song was next to music by bands like Atomic Kitten, but one of the more notable aspects of the overall package was the music video. For one, it was animated. And not cheaply so. It looks straight out of something airing on Cartoon Network, which is what happens when a crew of 25 spend 4 months toiling over a video like this. Of course, the Tomorrow Comes Today video had animation, but it was nothing compared to this video. 3D landscapes, smooth 2D animation, and dancing blue apes. This video stood out against the grain, especially from the overproduced, frankly bloated videos on MTV at the time, and it intrigued many as they watched it. Another angle to look at the video from is the influence of horror and zombie content on the Gorillaz aesthetic. The Clint Eastwood music video alone has multiple references to horror staples, such as the opening quote, "Every dead body that is not exterminated gets up and kills, the people it kills get up and kill," a quote from Dawn of the Dead. 2D's shirt is likely a reference to the Japanese horror series Resident Evil, the video contains zombie apes, and Murdoch getting grabbed by the crotch is a nod to Braindead.
It's my mother you're pissing on.
Even the dance the zombie apes do is an homage to Michael Jackson's Thriller. It's no wonder Gorillaz music was monikered zombie hip-hop. No doubt the horror angle comes inspired by the previously mentioned Dawn of the Dead, a half-zombie horror, half-critique on consumerist society. Gorillaz were firmly against this disease, against the industry they were in. These zombie apes were their opponents, the music industry against them. The horror influence is even present on the flip side, Dracula, talking about, well, Dracula playing clips from Transylvania 65000, a Looney Tunes short film.
Rest first, telephone tomorrow. Rest is good for the blood.
Santa just told the line. The rest of us is out of reach. Everybody party time. Some of us will never sleep again.
Some viewers may already know that it wasn't actually produced by Dan the Automator, but rather by one Curtis Lynch Jr. Curtis Lynch Jr. was an upcoming dancehall producer and musician at the time. He had gotten in contact with Parlophone initially over a bidding war for his single Thinking of You, but had turned them down. However, Parlophone unexpectedly phoned him about something else after this initial interaction. He was offered a spot working with Damon Albarn on this time, running out of synonyms for Monkey Project, as Damon had previously admitted that he was looking for reggae influence to steepen the Gorillaz sound. One coffee shop meetup later, and Curtis was showing up for some sporadic and chaotic Gorillaz sessions. They recorded around 3 songs together, one of which being the aforementioned Dracula, the other 2 songs remaining unreleased as far as we know, and as of right now.
I got to the studio, and the word chaos comes to mind describing it. There were horns in one section of the studio, Jamie was there were people filming it the entire time, and Damon was just sort of orchestrating everything.
But Curtis was involved in another project with Gorillaz besides Dracula. As a way to test the promotional waters back before the release of any music directly from the band, Parlophone wanted to quietly release a few remixes of Gorillaz songs to the dancehall and club community. A way to test the waters and see what songs Gorillaz should release as singles first. 3 potential single candidates were chosen to be remixed. Tomorrow Comes Today, Clint Eastwood, and a song we haven't mentioned yet, Slow Country. Initially, Curtis was given Tomorrow Comes Today, but he chose to remix Slow Country instead and added a feature to it, the famous Jamaican dancehall figure Sprague Benz. But what about the other 2 songs? Well, at some point, Damon had become familiar with a remix crew working in the same building as his studio, that being the Middle Row Crew. Middle Row was the name of the record label and studio founded by Macromelis brothers Ed and Hugh, alongside Carl Humphrey. Eventually, the record label, sporting art drawn by Jamie, would come to coexist in the Gorillaz habitat. Middle Row acted as an outpost for the 2-step and garage scene exploding in the UK, and as an added bonus, being in such near proximity to Damon led Hugh to become good friends with the man, even going to Jamaica with him. Damon had one day invited the crew over to listen to the finished masters for the album, Be it the reason why Damon invited them over, or an afterthought, or an idea from the label, but he decided that the Middle Row crew could onboard onto this remix project. Carl Humphrey got Tomorrow Comes Today, and somebody else from the crew got Clint Eastwood. That someone being Ed, who under his stage name Ed Case was given a shot by Damon to take on the task of remixing Clint Eastwood. Starting at 6 p.m. on a Friday night, Ed would up the tempo to 130 BPM, redo the piano, time stretch vocals, that business. But around 4 hours later, at around 10 p.m., Jamaican singer and DJ, not to be confused with DJ, they're different things, Sweetie Irie knocks on the door. After giving it a listen, Irie decides to write some lyrics. Ed recalled a freestyle Sweetie had done on a pirate radio, not that one, hold on, Jesus, and wanted him to replicate that flow. It took Irie about an hour to nail it down, then they added overdubs and vocal hooks. Eventually, Sweetie leaves and Ed is left to do the mixing and mastering through the night and into the morning. At some point, he was listening to the final mix when a feeling of being watched began to irk him. He turned around and voila! Damon Albarn, who had come in early that morning, listening intently as he'd heard the mix blasting through the corridor. Damon approved of it, saying, "That's alright." And thus, the refix of Clint Eastwood was born. Within the week comes the Notting Hill Carnival, an annual carnival event that takes to the streets of Notting Hill during late August. Ed had set up a stage at Meanwhile Gardens in the park, and it was here Damon Albarn by chance had shown up. Through an amazing series of events during the Notting Hill Carnival, the Clint Eastwood refix was performed. The very first Gorillaz live performance. There's even footage of it online. The refix, alongside the two other promotional remixes mentioned earlier, were sent around to dance clubs across England, and Ed Case's refix became a certified club hit. Jo Wiley made it her record of the week, and it dominated Radio 1, boosting the popularity of the single it remixed, or rather, refixed. Which leads us right back to Clint Eastwood and its massive impact onto the world. Reaching number 4 in the UK, the top 10 in at least 9 other countries, and number 54 in the US, it was certified platinum and ended up making it into the rankings of the best singles of the 2000s. All around, the world took notice of this strange new project, and they were excited for more. Luckily, they didn't have to wait too long. Radio hijackings and interviews began to materialize in the UK during the month of March.
Right, let's crack on.
Thank God for that, because my Japanese isn't as good as it used to be. Right, where's 2D tonight?
Unfortunately, he can't be with us, you know, because he's got a little bit of a cold, you know.
You don't exactly have a cold. I don't think that's correct. You said if he came down, you go, you know.
No.
You gonna kill him?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say I was gonna kill him. Did I? No. He's my little friend. I saved his life. I did, man. He was in a coma. You know, when I was volunteering at the local loony bin, I sort of nursed him out of his little coma.
That's the same little bin you put him in.
Shut your cake, old Russ. Oh, you're all such a right-on brother, aren't you? Just remember this. This is my band, and...
Man, you too twisted.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Is it not true that Murdoch, you don't like 2D, do you? Or do you? What did you do? Didn't you nearly kill him? You nearly killed him, didn't you?
Well, you know, that's a bit of an anathema. It's not true. It's not true. I crashed the car through the window, and it landed straight into DJ.
Side note, you hear those fantastic voices? At some point during the production era of Gorillaz, Jamie realized that they needed to have voice actors brought on for these interviews. Gorillaz needed to have a literal voice to speak. That's an entire medium that needs to be accounted for. A search for their voice actors began. The voice for Murdoch was to be fulfilled by Phil Cornwell. Known at the time for doing impressions of David Bowie and Mick Jagger, Phil was both Jamie's and Matt's first pick. Meanwhile, Noodle got the voice of Haruka Kuroda, a Japanese voice actor and occasional pro martial artist. 2D's voice was up for grabs for a little while, passing through Damon providing it to a tentative Earl Zinger, to finally Nelson DeFreitas. Matt and Jamie had legendary voice actor Red Pepper, of movie trailer fame, try out for Russell, but he couldn't end up doing it quite right. However, Nelson would recommend one of their other friends, Remy Kabaka Jr., as Russell's voice. Henceforth, Gorillaz could truly speak for themselves.
These action figures, they're useless. My head doesn't wobble like that.
Yeah, it does, D.
Look.
Russ, do it again.
Radio Frenzy an important event was announced. Starting on February 27th, the band started rehearsals at the Depot for what would be their first proper live show at the Scala on March 22nd. Conceptually, a live concert was something that Damon and Jamie had initially struggled with regarding Gorillaz. After all, getting cartoons to perform in a video is one thing, but live is another. A pre-recorded concert seemed like a little bit of a scam, and the technology to have the band perform live on stage just wasn't there yet, but they found a novel compromise. The live band would perform behind a large screen, while projections of music videos and visualizers would play. The musicians would be visible behind the projector as shadows, creating an interesting effect.
We worked with a guy who then had a company called Wildcat, and they'd done visuals for Left Field, so we went and spoke to them about this idea and the idea of creating a set of projections and the band playing behind a screen.
Damon would assemble the live band, which consisted of himself on vocals, Junior Dan on bass, Simon Katz on guitar, Cass Brown on drums, Mike Smith on keyboards, and Haruka Kuroda on an unplugged Les Paul and backup vocals playing Noodle. This live setup had only one direction to go in, and that was on stage.
A good time and finding music, you know, and to see what's going on with the music, you know. Expecting to see something different than Western life or, you know, that kind of little bands and, you know, need to find something more solid, actually.
We came all the way from America to go to the show. We can't even get in. California shit.
I don't know. I think it's either going to be projections with the band behind it, or a band with projections behind them, or some of that.
M1A1, 1,000 miles an hour. Gorillaz got the bass strong. Gorillaz said one song. La 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 la
I can't remember. I think I've made a hideous mistake.
Oh, have you? Anything I can help you with?
Only joshing, you little fat.
Some new school brothers in the house. Friend life, brothers for your all. Rocking the spot and you know we're reaching the top. With Russell banging these beats and you know we're intending to stop. Strumming guitars, even playing sitars. I'm jamming here on the mic with the rest of Gorillaz squad. Sparkling cards, we've been dominating the charts. Forcing all of your people to move your bodily parts, y'all.
You pay top dollar, you get Gorillaz.
Bass was incredible. The music was wicked. Just got right through you, man. It was wicked.
What did you think of the graphics?
Graphics, wicked. The way that they went together was wicked. Cool. Yeah.
Excellent.
Cool.
Thanks, Mark. You asked me what you thought of the gig?
It was brilliant. It was the most surreal gig I've been to. It was amazing. Cool.
The day of performance came around, and it was a success. To some, it was a clever way to deliver a blend of music and virtual insanity. They even had the voice actors on standby to deliver segments of dialogue, announcements, and blurbs on stage. But to a lot of critics, this seemed like a fad. NME called the performance jaded and a scam, The Guardian remained relatively cynical about the whole ordeal, and in general, the press didn't feel too good about it despite whatever the audience said. Was Clint Eastwood just a fluke? Well, Judgment Day was about to arrive, and it was going to be one hell of a party.